Welcome, welcome, my friends. This is your host, Mario Lanzarotti, the Freedom Architect. Welcome to the Self-Doubt Solution. Today, I have the honor of interviewing a dear friend and an absolute powerhouse, Jena Sophia. She is world-renowned. She is a subconscious specialist, a healer who's worked with thousands of people from all walks of life, celebrities, Fortune 500 CEOs, Forbes 30 under 30 entrepreneurs, billionaires, which I'm very curious to hear more about. And she has a very specific bespoke approach that brings together spirituality and scientific methods to really help high performance upgrade their business and personal life in ways they didn't even know was possible. And she has had a history of battling with many incurable, what people think was incurable, chronic illnesses for over a decade. And as you can see, she has overcome all of them. So I'm very curious to learn more about Jena's healing techniques that work with the power of the subconscious mind to help people rewrite their beliefs and rewrite their stories. Jena, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
Beautiful, beautiful. Jena, as I love to set the stage for our dear listeners and viewers, can you just explain what is it that you do and how does that help someone who might be tuning in today?
Yes, absolutely. So I work with high performers and I help them tap into their subconscious mind. And their subconscious mind is 95% of where their beliefs are housed, what they believe is possible for them, traumas that could be holding them back, limitations that are present in their current reality that they'd like to overcome. And really, what I help them do is I help access those parts where they would have been blocked or kind of locked away, and releasing that so that there's less sabotage, there's less stress, there's less kind of manipulation in their reality, so that they can move through life and through their business and health with more ease and grace, and also create unlimited possibilities as well, because when we access the mind, truly anything is possible.
Very, very well put. And I love that. I think there will be lots of practical wisdom to take away from this conversation. So be sure to stay for the entirety of this conversation. And Jena, I would like to know from you, was there a point in your life where Jena was like, I'm looking at my life and I'm not sure I like the way that it's running, but somehow things keep repeating themselves. And then there's this thing called the mind. When was the point for you where you started digging into all of that?
Absolutely. So I would say that my journey started very early on. My mom was a huge influence in my life in terms of introducing me to a lot of spiritual techniques and modalities, and understanding how do we create our reality. I'm sure, some of your listeners have heard of Abraham Hicks. So I started learning about, kind of channeled information when I was 10 years old. And so this kind of grew throughout my lifetime. But really, when I really got into the mind, really got into the subconscious, I would say that was in my early 20s, when I was looking at my life, as you just said, and looking around and being like, I can't live like this. I was super sick. I was on a lot of different medication, and I was told constantly by my healthcare providers that it would be impossible to fully heal or ever have a quote unquote normal life. And I really did not like that diagnosis. I didn't like that future that they said I was going to have. And so that's really when I uncovered and unlocked the subconscious mind through the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, and reading a book called Biology of Belief, which I really recommend, and understanding how exactly is our physiology connected to our mind, to our perception, and how much control do we actually have, or is it just kind of up to the external forces at play? How much control do we have as individuals? And so there definitely was a point in my life where I was looking at what was going on and I wasn't happy. And so discovering the subconscious mind more specifically was a huge, huge wake up call and an empowering moment for me.
Mm. And I very much resonate with what you shared about this. Yeah, this almost like authority figures pulling out this definite sword and cutting through your perceived reality and saying, that's the way things are, and you're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life. And for me, I
Yes.
remember I was struggling with lower back issues for about 2 years, and it was like intense chronic pain every single day. And I went to like 5 doctors, and the last one put me in this big scanner, and I came out of it, and he said, "Yeah, you have a really displaced disc, the slip disc." And he asked me, "How old are you?" And I'm like, 21. And he's like, "Oh my God!"
Wow.
It's like, "This is bad." It's like we need to perform surgery. And he checks his calendar. He's like, "Yeah, I got a spot on Friday." And it was like a Wednesday. I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Are you mad?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's really invasive surgery." And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no."
Wow.
And that was the time where I woke up, and I was like,
Yeah.
"I'm gonna try something else." So what
Mhm.
is it that after you got this diagnosis and you said no and you started looking into Bruce Lipton, was it that you started doing that, started shifting things for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. It really was when I was able to access my subconscious mind in a way that allowed me to communicate with it. See, a lot of the times, when we go to talk therapy or we use like conscious methods, it really is only accessing the surface, so the 5%. So by using different modalities, you're able to really access the subconscious mind and unlock the parts of you and the programs within your mind that are either playing out sickness or playing out, anxiety or fear or whatever it is, and being able to neutralize that and basically reprogram that so that that's not the program that's running.
And so I very much subscribe to this idea that your mind can heal or
Mm.
create sickness in the body. Like, what was
Yes.
that? Did you, as you went through that journey and you started diving into how to reprogram your subconscious mind, was there like an epiphany that you had as you? Because for me, I was very hopeless and
Mm.
so much pain, and tried it all, did it all, and nothing worked. And then I started doing things very differently, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden the pain in my back almost vanished in a matter of like in moments. And I was
Beautiful.
completely amazed. And so I'm curious, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I too similar had an experience like that where, I was very hopeless. My family, bless them, they were doing everything to try to help me. And at this point, the reason my wake up call was when, my doctors told me I basically had to get my uterus taken out, and I was like 21, 22. And I was
Wow.
like, that's not an option. Like, this is not how I'm going to live my life. And so from hearing that, I think there comes a lot of hopelessness and despair, but then there's also a lot of drive to be like, no, I'm going to beat this. And so, similarly to what you were going through, it was like, I'm not going to go to that extreme, but let's see if there's another extreme that I can go to and that I can find that can actually do the opposite of everything they're saying. And so, for me, it definitely was that. And, it took some time. I was going through my deeper, mind healing journey for a good year and a half. I looked into different modalities, worked with shamans, and traveled Southeast Asia to really kind of get to the different layers within my body. So I wouldn't say it was necessarily a one moment wake up in terms of the transformation, but it definitely came when I was collecting all of this and I was doing the inner work, and it was a gradual but sustainable transformation, which has still lasted till today and completely free of everything that the doctor said was incurable. They call it spontaneous remission. I like to
Oh, of
call it
course.
empowered remission though, because I'm like, there's actual science behind this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so you said something that I want to dissect for a moment, because I understand what you mean by it when you said healing the mind, or at least I
Yes.
tell myself I understand it. Now, why do you say healing the mind? Because usually this terminology is used in like the physical sensation, right? There's a wound that we
Yes.
need to heal, something on the inside. But what is it that needs to be healed in the mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I mentioned before, the subconscious houses our beliefs, what we believe is or isn't possible. It also houses all the traumas that we've ever experienced. Now, it doesn't have to be a trauma with a capital T, like in terms of a big car accident or an abusive situation. There can be small t trauma, which is like, abandonment or neglect, or things where, your parents might have left and you didn't want them to leave, and then all of a sudden you felt abandoned. These things all kind of collect into our subconscious, and it creates the reality of what we are experiencing today. Now, something I want to mention about the subconscious is that it doesn't understand time, which means that if something happened when you were 5 years old and it was a very powerful imprint into your subconscious mind, you could still be taking that programming and that pain and still accessing that part of it today. So, for example, let's say when you were younger, maybe you were bullied and people didn't like you. You might still be taking that trauma unconsciously into your reality now as an adult, feeling difficult to connect to others, not trusting others, feeling unsafe with new connections and new communities. So it's really important to, as I said, heal the mind, because there's so many childhood programs and things that happen to us that we're perpetuating today as adults. And the way that we know, are we perpetuating something, is we see something in our adult life, either our health, our business success, our relationships, and wherever there are areas that you want to work on, it usually will signal to your subconscious that there's something going on here that needs to be healed and looked at. And so that's really my specialty in helping people find out, okay, you have a problem, but let's try to get to the root of it so that you're not continuing to perpetuate those limitations and those blocks that you keep coming up against.
So this is interesting, because isn't it that at some point these beliefs that we tend to call limiting served a purpose, and the purpose was protection, and it might have been an illusionary threat that resulted, yet there was a protective element to it that served its purpose. And is it then that I'm understanding that it's sort of like it's outrun its purpose and now it's no longer there for what it used to, but now it's actually becoming a limiting factor in your life?
Absolutely. You can take the example of, let's say, someone that grew up in poverty or didn't have a lot of resources growing up. So that is like fuel to work really hard and go after something to make themselves successful, because there's this unsafety or this scarcity that is living within them that's driving them to create security and safety. But what I found is with people who are self-made, especially like on a high net worth individual side, where they've amassed all this material goods and amassed all this fortune, but yet those limitations are still playing up because they're still holding scarcity in their mind in other ways, right? Or they're holding fear in their system in other ways, or they still don't feel safe no matter how much money that they have. And so it's really important to know that, yes, they can be fueling certain behaviors that you would look at and say, oh, actually, that is beneficial. But at the same time, limitation is limitation, and there's going to be an upper limit to that limitation until it starts to become more of a sabotage to you. So yeah, there's definitely an upside to it. But at the same time, I think that when we remove limitations, we can see that life can move much more easily and freely, and we don't need this struggle and hardship to get to the places that we want to go or create the success that we have. And it's not to say that there isn't hard work involved. That's not the point, but it's what is happening internally within you as you are creating your experience, as you are creating more success and ease and whatever it is that you want in your life.
I love that. And I'm very much in agreement with that. And there's another word now that you said twice. So now I want to bring it up.
Yes.
And you talk about creating your experience. Right?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean for someone to create their life experience? Like, what would you tell to someone, they're an entrepreneur, they're doing fairly well by most people's standards, yet they find themselves struggling. They keep running into sort of the same kind of relationship pattern that then falls apart. And then they say, it's not my fault. It's just like, I can't find the right one. They just don't respect me and all of that. How does someone create their own experience?
Yes, that's a great question. And, it goes back to the subconscious mind again. If anyone listening is dealing with the same problem over and over again, it is an indication that there is something going on in your subconscious that is perpetuating those belief systems, that is perpetuating that perception of that situation. And so I always say the most powerful thing you can do, and it takes 1 second if you're quick at it, to change your experience is to change your perception. Because when you are able to look at something differently, not only consciously, but subconsciously, where then it becomes a natural way of looking at it, not trying to force your way to kind of see the situation or fake it till you make it. That works, but it takes a lot of time. But if you're able to access, the subconscious part of you that can change the perception of how you're looking at things, you are going to see that your outer reality will reflect a different experience. And if it doesn't immediately, what you'll find is that internally you're running a different program. So the same thing might happen, but you're not going to be a victim to it. You're not going to say, oh, this is just how it goes. This is how it is for me. I always pick the wrong ones. You're going to see it as, okay, I'm getting more clarity that this is what I am attracting, and this is what continues to come up into my reality. But what do I believe still about the situation that could be perpetuating it this way? And then being able to get very clear and real with yourself to say, look, you know what? I actually do believe people can hurt me, or I do believe, that I am unworthy or unlovable in some way. And so working on that aspect and working on those really real and raw limitations is super important to get to the root of, that limitation and that block. Because when you free yourself of that, that's when the attraction game becomes a different show and experience.
Very true. And, as you were speaking, what comes up for me is this: I like to look at life from a place of choice. And I find there is a conscious choice that we can make when we are in a collected, calm state, when our nervous system is not triggered and then going into fight, flight, or freeze. Yeah. And we can make an actual decision for the first time. And I like to say the other time we make an unconscious choice, even though it's not really a choice because we're unconscious, but just for the distinction of it, I find that we're choosing the kind of experience that we're living. And I often ask myself, well, why? Why? What's the point, right? Okay, I'm now having an experience where I feel a lot of guilt, I feel a lot of shame, I feel maybe some anger, and I keep feeling that. I'm like, why am I choosing that, right? And what I came to is the answer is always the same, so I can be right. So my reality can be confirmed to me. So I can be right about the beliefs that I hold to be true. Some of the beliefs are, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not rich enough, I'm whatever, right? I'm not enough. How do you see that playing out?
In clients or in general with people?
Clients, general, like you can speak into your clients. That's interesting.
No, I see that as a case because a lot of people, especially when they are new to this type of work and new to this way of looking at themselves, there's a lot of ego involved. And the ego is all about keeping your beliefs as the version of your reality. Okay. And so the problem is that when we are trying to move past the ego, when we're trying to see into the person and to see into the conditioning that person went through, it can be very overwhelming and very intense. And a lot of the times what can happen is that people don't even want to look at that. I've had clients that have stopped working with me because it's too much. And again, I'm not here to hold people's hands. Yeah, I'm not here to hold people's hands. I'm here to get them a result. And that process may not be, sunshine and rainbows, so it's really important to understand that there is ego that has to be dissolved, not your whole ego, but the ego that's kind of holding you back, the ego that holds the limitations. And so in order to really get to the root of what's happening subconsciously, you really have to be open to seeing the parts of you that have been conditioned, and also recognize that it wasn't your fault, because a lot of conditioning and subconscious programming happens between the third trimester in your mother's womb all the way up until the age of 7. That's like a good portion. They say scientifically anywhere between 90 to 98% of the way that you perceive the world happens during that time, because the brain is in a theta state, and a theta state is when we're most suggestible, when we're absorbing the reality around us, what we believe is and isn't possible, what we see as right, or goals we should have when we're older. They always ask you when you're younger, what do you want to be when you grow up? And like, people have these like conditions of who they think they should be because of what the world is telling them they are, and then they grow up, and if they're out of that matrix, they can be other things. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It does, very much so. And it's fascinating what you just said about, that the pretty much your majority of your mindset, the perception of your life, with it, all the possibilities, all the sets of behaviors. And we got to go spin it even further and say, even, disease. There's this
Yes.
idea that disease is inherited because of
Mm-hmm.
genetics, and the
Yes.
work that Dr. Bruce Lipton brought forward, and Dr. Joe Dispenza, you'll see that it's actually the mental emotional patterns that trigger the chemical releases in the DNA expression in the body, that then say,
Absolutely.
oh, you're the fourth in the family to get breast cancer. What else
Yeah.
is saying, oh, you're all dealing with lots of anger, shame, guilt? Oh, has that maybe
Right.
some sort of contribution to that? So I find that really fascinating. And there's two more things that you brought up. And one was, first was the theta state. Now, if I hear you correctly, you're saying that the theta state makes you the most open to receive the
Yeah.
new information. Now,
Yeah.
how does Jenna put herself into the theta state if she wants to upgrade her program?
Absolutely. So there are many ways that you can access the theta state. You can do that through meditation, through breath work, through a whole brain posture, which is when your legs are crossed one over the other, and then your hands are crossed like this, and you're sitting like this. This is another way that accesses. Yeah, you can get into it right now. Yeah, it's another way that you can access the theta state. There are so many different ways that it's accessible. Music is a huge thing that imprints us, especially mainstream music. So I always say watch out for the radio and anything mainstream, because there's a lot of programming in that. And
Can you
there's
elaborate on that? Like,
yeah, I was gonna say, if you want to talk about that, because
please.
it's yeah. So there's been a lot, I've seen a lot of evidence myself in mainstream music. So they use a certain frequency to access different energy points in the body that would program that. There's something, in mainstream rap music, there's something called the 808 frequency, which basically hits the root chakra. And so it's like that doom, 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 that type of frequency. And what that does is that it destabilizes the root chakra. And so when you have like rap music that's destabilizing the root chakra, and it's talking about guns and violence and money and killing and treating women bad, all of this starts to create incoherent frequencies in your field and deharmonizes your own energy field. And so that's one way music is used. Another way music is used is through lyrics. And they have a lot of technology where they can reverse the messaging in the music. So for example, music can be saying one thing, it could be like, I love you, baby. But then if you were to like put it in reverse, it could be like, kill yourself or hate yourself.
Really?
And I've seen that with Billie Eilish. Billie, is that her name? Billie,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Billie Eilish. Yeah, see, I don't really know mainstream music, but I've seen like her music videos in reverse. There's a lot of really interesting information
Wow.
out there where you can see that even the sound changes. It gets really like almost demonic sounding. So music is a huge vehicle and almost like weapon in a way where, a lot of people listen to it. They think, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. I kind of like am jamming and it feels good, but it doesn't actually feel good. It's actually
Mm.
programming you. And then those frequencies get into your subconscious, and then it can program you to do certain things or think certain ways and kind of mess with the frequencies of your mind. Yeah.
Wow, wow. And I've looked into this as well a long time ago. And for me, it says as I grow in consciousness, I can't listen to certain texts anymore, even though I
Yeah.
really like the sort of the melody with it.
Totally.
When I go to the gym, it's like I'm listening, and it's like I just kill this bitch, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
next.
Don't.
It's like,
Yeah.
and it's becoming very,
Yeah.
it's almost like it's going up and up, and to the point where
Yeah.
I can no longer tolerate that. And there's a
Absolutely.
sense of me that's like, oh, that means I'm no longer listening to this music. What else am I going to listen to? Man, then I'm not
Yeah.
going to listen to anything. So
Yeah.
it's I think it's a very valid point to become very conscious and very aware of what you're consuming, because
Exactly.
everything has a frequency.
Yeah.
Everything, it stimulates certain emotional frequencies. And even if you're not into the term frequency, because I know for some people that's too much out there, certain information triggers certain emotions inside of you. And those emotions
100%.
trigger behaviors, and that triggers thought
100%.
patterns and so forth. And
Yeah.
you also talked about attracting, right? You talked about
Mhm.
attracting, and then there's the whole field of the law of attraction and manifestation. And I'm wondering, because you brought this up early in the conversation before we started, before we hit the record button, we talked about how in the manifestation, let's call it industry or field, a lot of people say you need to feel worthy in order to attract more wealth, more abundance into your life. And you said you challenged that. So I'm curious. Can you speak on that?
Yeah. So I definitely think that there is a lot of spiritual jargon and just things that people have hopped on the bandwagon and just taken as gospel. And I always say, no matter what information you come across, even me speaking, if it doesn't resonate, throw it out. I'm not here to get you to believe a certain thing or think in a certain way. I'm only here to open up your mind to think differently if that's something that you're open to. And so you should take that with anything that you're consuming, really, whether that's music, the internet, whatever it is, books. And so when it comes to this area of manifestation, the thing is that we are always manifesting. Manifestation has gotten this rap of like, you're only manifesting when you're manifesting good things. And when you get that partner and that car and that
Right.
100K deal and this and that and that, it's like, no, that's not true. Like you're manifesting, let's say, the experience that you're in now, even if you're not 100% on board with it, right? And so it's really important and empowering to know that, because then you actually have control over what you're going to do about it and how you can change your perception in your mind and your actions to reflect a different reality. Now, the whole concept of worthiness, which I think is great, but it almost has like a little bit of like a bow. It's like, just be worthy and, your whole life will be so much greater. And it's like, that's not the truth. Okay. Because I genuinely don't think it's 100% possible for any one of us to be 100% worthy, because we are always in communication and, we're just always engaging with the external reality. There's always going to be something with more, someone that has more love than you, someone that has more money than you, and you're always going to, whatever you can quote unquote compare yourself to, you're always going to say, well, damn, if I was more worthy, I'd be a billionaire. Or if I was more worthy, I would have like a husband that loves me, and whatever it is, right? So I don't really subscribe to this level of worthiness as a means of manifestation, because it's almost impractical. And like, how do you grasp worthiness? It just doesn't work. And especially, for me, I work with a lot of high net worth individuals, people who you would look to if you subscribe to this worthiness, and you're on your journey and you're like, wow, they must be so worthy because they have a $500 million company, or they have 3 kids, or they're this or they're that, and they're living the life. They must be so worthy. But what I found is that that's actually could not be farther from the truth. What they have is that they have beliefs about what it takes to get there. They have beliefs of what they believe is possible for them. them. And so that's really kind of what you have to look at when you're talking about manifestation, because the universe doesn't really care if you feel worthy or not. The universe only cares if you believe in it and you're working and taking action to make it happen. And so what I see is that with enough compounded action and enough intention and focus into the direction that you want to go in, also releasing any limitations subconsciously that could be sabotaging you in the future of that creation, that's really when you get to, the real manifestation. And so, yeah, I just think worthiness is something that isn't a practical way of teaching people how to create their reality or giving them, a method in terms of, be worthy in this and then this will happen, because a lot of the times high performers, they still have that same ceiling, which is, I don't feel worthy for the next level, or, I don't know how I got here. I have imposter syndrome. If people have imposter syndrome and they have all this like external success, they're still unworthy, right? So it's an interesting way to look at it. And personally, the way that I view it, because it's more empowering to know that your actions and your beliefs and your perception really is what generates and determines your outcomes.
So it's more, I'm hearing more of a holistic view to that, rather than just say, it's all about your beliefs. If your beliefs are not in alignment, forget about it. It's like, then there's so much more to it. There's a whole intricate system of, harmonizing elements that work all together that then produce the kind of outcomes that you're looking for. And more importantly, support it with the kind of experience that you're looking for. Because mostly, and I find, and I would love to hear how that is for you, I see a lot of high performers, because I also exclusively work with high performers. They are very attached to an outcome, a measurable specific outcome. I want to double my income. I want to be married. I want to have a six-pack, whatever. And it's then the digging deeper that then will reveal what they really, really want is the actual emotional experience that they think will be handed to them once they got the money, the partner, or the whatever, right? So what is it that you're seeing in that?
So I see that like a lot of people, like you said, they want something because it's the emotional experience that will give it to them, right? And so while that is the case, it might mean that, this thing that they are striving for, it gives them that emotional experience, but it also gives them a physical experience, right? So I also would like to say that it's not always just the emotional experience. There are some physical experiences that allow us to have an emotional experience. Take being in love, for example, right? Like you can want to be in love, but you really need another person to receive the love that you want on the other side. It's not just something you can give to yourself. So I would say it also depends on what it is that you're looking to create for yourself, right? Not everything is an internal experience, because we are constantly responding to the external world. And yes, we have control over our perceptions, and we have control over, something happens. How do I decide how I want to feel? But then there's also that physical element to it that is very real, right? And that, I don't think should be bypassed, especially when it's all about everything's happening inside, and therefore like it doesn't matter what's happening outside, so I think that's an important element as well.
That's a great point to add to that, and I totally agree, because to me it's having both. It's like having it all. It's like if you want the money, then go, great, let's get the money, and don't just settle for, okay, I'll have peace, and then I'll settle for $1,000 instead of 10,000. Like, let's have it all, because it's all possible.
Exactly. And I think that's so important that you're saying that, and that we're having this conversation and highlighting this, is because a lot of the times, people who help others with their mindset in this, it's all about the internal experience. But it's like, yes, the internal experience will create the external experience, but then there are also elements that are created externally that we get to engage in and have an emotional experience with, right? But we still need an external experience, right? It's like, if you know that you want to be on a private jet, this is something I helped one of my clients with. She was like, I really want to be on private jets now. I just want to fly private. This is what I want to do with my, and literally within like a few months, she manifested, however you want, private jets. And now she has a different emotional experience with that, because it's like, wow, I created that, but I also was bold to say, you know what, I want this physical thing and I want to experience this. I don't need it, but I want to experience this. And I think this is a really important thing to highlight, because it's like, we are beings that desire things. We're here for, experiencing expansion within ourselves, stretching our limits of like joy and purpose and fulfillment. And like, everyone's idea of that is different. For some people, it's highly materialistic things, and other people, it's, going into the mountains and meditating and finding that peace from within. But we can't berate ourselves or put ourselves down because of the desires that we have, because it's like, oh, that's too much of this or that's too much of that. You as a person and your character does not change with what you have, and it shouldn't. And if you think that it does, you should look at yourself, because that's not the way that this world works. In my understanding of, the physical world and the spiritual world, it's like we get to experience it all, and the way that we experience it, again, is an internal perception. But we are here to experience life and materialism and what that looks like. And if, we should honor that, and we should see that as like, wow, we can expand into that and we can experience those things, because why not?
Yeah, yeah. I love that. And I think it's so true. And this, what you just said, helped me transcend so much fear, guilt, and shame because of things that I did in my past. And that then I came to another level of consciousness, and then I reviewed that and I was judging it, which is actually
Yeah.
even a lower level of consciousness. But just thinking, oh, but now I wouldn't do that. And I was like, actually, I would, the times that I did drugs and in parties and then in the past, and the go for it, and was sleeping around and like with women that I knew was not going to go to anything, and I was beating myself. I'm like, you know what? No, that's an experience that I
Yeah,
created in my life, and at the time that I was engaged in it, I enjoyed it. It was
exactly.
something that added to the richness of my life. Today, I wouldn't do it again because I've changed in many ways,
Yeah.
but I'm no longer shaming myself for things. And I find that that's a very religious, rigorous approach to how we're supposed to living life, when freedom comes really to me when we are no longer relying on our achievements to give us the
Mhm.
things that we want to experience. For me, and I see this a lot with high performers, I'm curious how that is for you. The people that come to me often come from a place of like extreme hustle, just do, little to no being. And I present to them a different reality of operating and creating even better results, which is, I call it a quality mindset over a quantity mindset. And I get the same response every time. I get always like, ooh, ooh. It's like this deep resistance to moving to a different way of operating, because, and I coach people to the point where they get to see that they're actually afraid of having peace, because they
Mm.
think, if I have peace now, I'll just chill and do nothing and just,
Or
watch
I'll lose it
Netflix.
all. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm like, wait, but if you had peace, doesn't it then make more sense that you engage in more of the things that you really genuinely like, such as going onto a private jet,
Yeah.
traveling the world, doing your favorite business, and being with people you love, and then people eventually adopt it. Although some people, just like you, also were like, nah, I'm out of here. This is too scary for me. So how is that for you?
For me personally,
For the clients that you work
for,
with, and
for my
also for
client.
you, would love to hear that as well.
Yeah, no, I think it really, again, comes down to the client. There are some people that are open to looking at that other side of what reality could look like, having that peace. But I will talk to why it's so hard for people to want more ease in their life. Again, it comes back to the wiring. When you look at a successful person, and what I've seen working with the minds of successful people, is that they have gotten to that level of success the way that they are. And they feel that if they change that, they're somehow going to sabotage everything that they've created to date.
Right.
So it's really interesting to observe that narrative and see someone move through that, because it is painful. It is an ego death, but it's also getting real with yourself to say, I know that I'm having high amounts of stress, that there are levels of unfulfillment, that I'm not prioritizing my family, that I'm, absent with my partner, and I want to change that. But then when it comes to actually changing that, they have to look at the fact that, look, because of your wiring, because of your conditioning, because of the way that you are now, that's creating all of this sabotage. That's the domino effect of that. And it's seeping out into other areas of your life that you're like, I can no longer continue this way, right? So doing that and going through that change process is a bit of a death, but when they're able to connect to the feeling and to the potential of them being differently and having a different nervous system regulation and understanding that, wait, no, I can actually accomplish even more when I'm in this state. That's really when the change can happen. And when I see the transformation, because it's like, I'm okay to let the part of me go that had to have use all of this energy and put all of this like strength and dedication and use it in a way that was kind of in a resistant, that was a heavy way of moving through life. It's like, wait, actually, I can have all those things and more when I'm in a state of peace and calm, and my mind can lead me to the things that I need to do in a way that I need to do it that will not be as stressful, that will be more easeful, and overall just change the quality of my life, which is really what this work is about. How do you want to live your life doing the things that you're doing now? And it's totally up to you to decide that internal experience for you. And the truth is, some people aren't ready. As we talked about before, I've had people that have just ghosted me after paying me a lot of money and then just leaving, and what am I to do? This is their journey, and it's hard. It's hard to look at yourself in that way, but not everyone's ready to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Great point. And I very much subscribe to what you just shared in terms of going through this ego death. And for me, I very much remember when I was going through the first ego death, I would say, maybe there were more before, but as I quit my pilot career, and it was like a whole, it was like a theater set that's been playing for years, and people have known it and they loved it and they keep coming back, and all of a sudden the whole house burned down and it's gone forever. And that was an extremely painful process that really forced me into becoming vulnerable and into
Right.
really listening to my heart, and then honoring that voice that's always been there and that I've just been suppressing. And I'm wondering, how is it for you personally? Because as you evolve on this journey, do you how do you sort of deal with situations where you're noticing, okay, consciously I know this might be a healthier, better expression of my life, but somehow I don't want to go there. What does your process look like?
So I definitely like, it's totally normal to have that. And I don't think that ever goes away, especially when you are aware that you are going to consistently and constantly be evolving, right? There's
Mm,
always new experiences that we have that make us reflect or make us want to course correct or change our behavior or change the way that we're doing things. And for me personally, it's just about having compassion with where I'm at in what I'm going through in any moment, right? Like how you talked about how the judgment is lower consciousness. Look, I don't believe that there are any emotions that are good or bad. How's that? Because they are serving a purpose for you to grow, period. Right. So even if we judge ourselves, even if we, look down on ourselves or, experience anxiety or frustration or depression about where we are, it's okay, because through that you almost see that as like soil, and it's like all those like negative energies, they're planting seeds, but then you can decide how you're going to kind of grow and express yourself from that point moving forward, right? So it's really about, for me, having compassion of recognizing, ooh, there's a pattern there that I think we should look at and maybe not do so much. And then deciding, am I ready for it? Because the thing is, and I think a
mm,
lot in the self-development space, is it's about quick result, fast action. You see the problem, you change it immediately. But what I think happens, and And while I do subscribe to that, because a lot of the work that I do is about getting quick behavioral changes, getting that, perception to shift immediately. And that's beautiful, especially when people are in prisons of their own mind. But the thing is that there's also the human experience. And I'm taking a spiritual angle at this, is that we are here to have a human experience, and not everything needs to be rushed, while my energy moves very quickly. I'm a manifesting generator in human design. Human design is another great way to know more about yourself for those listening. So as a manifesting generator, my energy works very quickly. So yes, it's like I see something and I want to change it, but then I've been giving myself a bit more grace and compassion to reflect, to say, okay, this is something that I'm experiencing. Let me just receive the medicine of what this limitation is trying to teach me. Where am I, scared, or where is there fear, or where is there, anxiety, and kind of just getting the message from myself of like, this is happening because you're holding on to this, and just kind of sitting with that. And when you do that, you can almost dissolve it. The more and more that you're aware of what's happening, you don't necessarily need like, a six-figure coach or this and that. You can start doing that yourself when you're super real with yourself, with, being vulnerable and being okay to say, okay, you know what? I am a bit scared, or I am a bit worried, and this is how I feel right now. And the more that you can actually get in touch with those emotions, have compassion for the fact that you do feel it, you'll find that those emotions neutralize much more quickly. And because you're not making a story or identifying as having that or being that. And you're just like, this is something that's moving through. So, yeah.
So if I hear you correctly, you're saying that the unconscious processes that we're experiencing, they will or might, we don't really know, never go away as long as we're living in this human experience. And what you're describing is you're bringing a higher degree of consciousness to it. Like, and I can relate to that. Just this morning, actually, I called my credit card company in Germany because I wanted to transfer some money around so I have more funds available for a payment that I want to make. And been using the same process that always works for years. And then I call them, she's like, "Oh, hi, I'm new here," sort of thing. And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then she couldn't help me, and I got really frustrated because I've been on the line for 30 minutes. I'm like, there's so much that I want to do today, and now I'm sitting
Yes.
here, and then da da da, and then got really angry. And I was
Mm.
just like, and I could hear myself going like, "Yeah, it's fucking stupid," and da 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 da. And then I caught
Yeah.
myself. I'm just like, okay, I'm going through
Yes.
that. Okay. And then what I did was like, I forgive myself,
Mm.
and I forgive myself for judging the lady, for judging myself, and I also forgive the lady. And so
Yeah.
gone. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
the things that I used to sit with for like days or weeks or months or even
Right.
longer,
Mm.
now as I catch it, I know exactly what to do and I move through it because mentally I no longer have that attachment to getting something out of that. Because I know
Right.
that the other side is so much more unbound, so much more powerful, beautiful, bountiful. I'm like, me holding on to this with my little ego here is just
Right.
not serving me anymore to be the person that I want to be, that creates
Mm-hmm.
this kind of vision that I want to create. And
Yes.
that I find is changes a lot. So I'm really appreciative that you share the sentiment that certain things might never go away. However,
Mm-hmm.
the way you move through them shifts completely. And that's what I'm
Yeah.
hearing in your share as well.
Absolutely. And I would argue even to say that, the human experience never goes away, but it's again the perception in which we engage with those experiences, which means that the pain of those experiences can go away.
Yes.
So you might still have the human emotions of frustration and anger. And like I said, they're beautiful emotions to have. But where are you allowing that to dictate your life experience overall? And that's the thing. It's like people think that they're going to get to this like samadhi enlightened state where no one bothers them, or like there's never going to be frustration or anger or anything again, which is like a complete like illusion in itself. But it's how are you engaging with those emotions when those, kind of trigger points come up, because you're never going to get rid of all your triggers. But what you can do is change the way in which you engage with them. And that's really the work that I do, is like, how much time, especially for high performers, how much time are you spending in those negative emotions versus claiming the experience internally that you want to have? And again, that's why you have to do the unconscious work and subconscious work, because there's so many ways that we've been kind of hardwired to just kind of be on guard, or like fight or flight, or like want to just be in like combat with life, right? But this is to understand that, wait, you can actually get to a level where that's not your case and that's not your experience of reality, but also being able to have different subconscious patterns where when you're in those stressful moments, like you said, you can catch yourself and take a step back, neutralize it, and not let it completely take you for a ringer, right? And those can be small things, those can be high level stress, experiences. But it's really about understanding that your energy and the energy that you're putting into anything, whether it's positive or negative, has a lasting effect on your experience. Yeah.
That is so, so true. And as you said this, I have a life example that radically shifted my life by doing this work that you're describing. In one belief has profoundly changed my life. And that belief that I adopt is it's healthy and okay to ask for help. I never did that, because to me that was like the ultimate evidence of me being weak. And so I've I've used out years of time, money, and energy of finding certain solutions I was looking for, simply because I did not want to ask for help. Now, one of my guiding life principles is, before I ask, how do I do something, I ask myself, who can help me with this? So I have a Rolodex of amazing human beings, and I just text them, hey man, I'm looking, can we help with this, help me with this? And the solutions just come. So this is how we then, to your point, speed up the process, because you definitely can in a different way. So I have one more question that I would love to ask you, that I ask all my guests, which I'm very curious what you're going to say. And that is, if you could spend an hour of time with any person, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
That's a good question. Immediately what comes to mind is my future self,
Ah,
because I would just be so curious to know how this all ends up. I'd be so curious to know. And I would be curious because I know that the subconscious and all these beliefs that are stored there creates the reality and creates the experiences that we manifest, that we experience. And so I'd want to know, based on where I am right now, am I going in the direction that I want, or is there work for me to still do? Because,
interesting.
the final results, so to speak, in this moment, could use some work. And so that's just my take, because I always love looking at the mind and the data of like, this creates this. And so if I didn't have that, what would I need to believe instead? And so, but then again, at the same time, I'm super on board with just the ride of this life and seeing where it all ends up. I mean, I never thought I'd be where I am today. So clearly it's all for fun.
I love that. And that's a great answer, to ask your future self, sort of, what are the beliefs that I now have that I think,
Yeah.
that you think require an upgrade. So that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Jenna,
Yeah.
tell us please, if high performers are looking for an upgrade in a way that is effective, in a way that's proven, in a way that really changes their life, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
So you can find me on my website, which is beyondthebelief.com. And I have a wait list where you can apply to. And if it's a good fit, my team will get back to you. I also give a lot of free information on Instagram, and my Instagram is _Jena Sophia. So those are the two best ways to get a hold of me and what I'm sharing in this world.
Beautiful. Well, and I can vouch for that. Jenna is someone who really walks the talk. She embodies her work. And
Thank you.
if you ever have the pleasure and privilege and luxury to work with her, I would suggest you highly, highly make use of that. Jena, thank you so much for being on the show. I will be sure to add all of the links in the show notes so people know exactly how they can find you. Any last words that you have that you would like to share with our listeners?
I would just say if you're going to believe anything is possible, because that has what has created the success in my business, the success in my health, the success that I've been able to help other high performers grow. And so just believing anything is possible, whether you say that to yourself every day, it'll soon become a belief, and you'll see that the world really opens up to you and things start happening that you didn't even believe were possible. So anything is possible.
Wow, what a close, my friends, what a close. This was a wonderful conversation. Jena, thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you for deciding to invest in your mind, because your mind unlocks, as Jena says, all of the possibilities in life. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Mario Lanzarotti, the Freedom Architect, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Self-Doubt Solution.